Hi, folks. LeRoy here. Welcome to today's episode. Let me begin this with a question that many capable professionals recognize instantly, even if you've never really said it out loud. Have you ever made a thoughtful, intentional decision to move in a new direction, and then you find yourself unsettled? Not because something failed, but it's like nothing has failed yet. If so, you've definitely come to the right place today. In this episode, we're going to address three particular things. We're going to talk about the natural role that discomfort plays. We're going to talk about the power of reframing this uncertainty that you're feeling. And we're going to talk about the most important thing, and that is how to build your confidence. So, in these moments of discomfort, there's really no crisis, no dramatic mistake. You're not panicking. You just have this sense of uneasiness. You're doing the work, you're having the conversations, you're thinking seriously about the value of independence and entrepreneurship. And still, there's this quiet tension lurking beneath the surface. It's like a voice saying that I thought I'd be further along, further down the road by now. That moment, of course, is deeply uncomfortable, especially for people who are used to competence. And because there's nothing obvious, no specific problem to point to, most people end up turning that discomfort inward. They assume that this means that they've misjudged something, or maybe that they're not as ready as they thought, or maybe they've actually lost a little bit of that edge that they felt like they used to have. So let's first talk about how this is a normal thing. Normalizing things usually is very beneficial because it gives you this sense that what I'm going through is what I should expect. And therefore, there's really nothing that should keep me from moving forward, nothing that really throws me off track. But what I want to say very clearly and early is this: that discomfort, it is not a sign that you're failing. It's simply a sign that you step out of a system, out of a structure that used to do a tremendous amount of invisible work for you. Most professionals underestimate how much structure organizations provide beyond the tasks and certainly the paycheck, right? The role that we play, it gives us an identity. Our calendar, it gives us momentum. All the meetings and all the deadlines, they quietly answer a really important question. And that question is, am I doing okay? Am I on track? Even on days when the work itself might be boring or frustrating, certainly you're going to have opportunities to complain about the bureaucracy and the politics of the organization and all the different constraints. But those same structures, they very, very quietly, but very powerfully orient you every single day. So when you step into independent work, that entire scaffolding, it just disappears almost instantly. But this internal sense of direction, it doesn't get replaced overnight. There's a lag, there's a gap. And that lag is what often feels like a sense of struggle. So what makes it especially confusing is that from the outside, things really do look fine. You really are thinking clearly, you're not reckless, you're not even reacting emotionally. You're making pretty good, measured, consistent choices. And though on the inside, you feel disconnected, unmoored in a way that you didn't really expect. That disconnect often is what triggers self-doubt. We think if this were the right move, wouldn't I feel a bit more settled? But that assumption only holds up if you believe that clarity arrives before transition. In reality, it's the other way around. Clarity often follows this period of transition. I once worked with a senior professional, let's call him Thomas, right? Thomas had spent nearly 3 decades in leadership roles. He told me something a few years ago that really stuck with me. Thomas said, I didn't realize how much I actually relied on the system, the structure, the administrative footprint to tell me whether or not I was doing well. Without it, he said, I kept looking for confirmation of my success and my progress that never really came. Nothing was wrong. This guy's work was solid. His thinking was sound, but everything kept feeling unfamiliar. He kept checking himself kind of the way you check a gauge, right? Especially if you think you're running out of gas, looking for some signal that he was on the right track. And because there wasn't a dashboard anymore, the absence of feedback, it started to feel exactly like that sense of failure. This is why so many new independent professionals struggle before anything goes wrong. They're not failing, they're actually recalibrating. And recalibration is uncomfortable precisely because it happens in silence. There's no evidence of progress. Inside an organization, recalibration is often shared, right? You go through a change process, you get feedback one way or another, you get redirected. If you're moving forward and doing well, you get some sense of reassurance. Outside of it, though, recalibration happens internally. It happens through reflection, lots of trial and error, and making adjustments. And it feels a lot slower, and it certainly feels a lot lonelier because you're not sharing that experience. And if you don't understand what's happening, if you don't appreciate that it's normal, you're going to misinterpret it as slowness and, in fact, stagnation. Second thing, the fact that uncertainty has to be reframed as an orientation process and not an evaluation process. So let's talk about how to work with this phase instead of fighting it. Because this is where so many people stall and burn unnecessary energy trying to feel normal again. We all have that need, of course, as human beings, to be in a place that's stable, a place that's normal. And the first practical shift that we need in our mindset is learning to stop interpreting uncertainty as some verdict, as some conclusion. In organizational life, uncertainty often means danger, right? It means priorities have changed, leadership is unstable, or something is really seriously off track that's going to impact our ability to achieve the mission. So your nervous system naturally has learned to treat uncertainty as a signal to do something, to fix it, to correct it, or even to back off, retreat, and start over again. But early independence is different. Uncertainty is not a warning sign. It's the environment that you actually are now a part of. You're no longer executing within kind of a known container. You're not in a familiar environment and a familiar place where you can anticipate all the signals. You're orienting yourself on a regular basis and very quickly to a very new environment. This requires a different relationship with not knowing. I often say that one of the most important things about being independent is having a capacity to really, on a consistent basis, deal with ambiguity, right? And again, different relationship with not knowing. Instead of asking, should I feel more confident right now? A better question is this: what am I learning about how I work when no one is assigning priorities for me? Instead of, is it working? A better question: do I understand my value more clearly now than I did last month? These recalibration questions may sound subtle, but what they do is really fundamentally change how you experience this phase of discomfort and uncertainty. When uncertainty is treated as orientation rather than an evaluation, it stops feeling like a test that you're failing and it starts feeling like information that you're gathering. You're part of the same learning process that ultimately you're going to have your clients walk through. When you don't make this shift in terms of this orientation, uncertainty gets mislabeled as incompetence. Capable people start second guessing themselves. They start second guessing decisions that don't actually need any kind of revisiting. They're reopening doors that were already thoughtfully closed, and they're chasing assurance instead of following after important insight. Reframing this uncertainty as orientation will allow us to stay present long enough to actually learn what we need to learn to move successfully into the next phase. And this idea of accumulated learning, it's part and parcel of being successful in the consulting field itself. When we gather information, we're taking the things that we've heard in different places and synthesizing and pulling it together. So this is a really practical shift that you need to make. The second really practical shift is redefining progress, redefining in a way that fits this particular stage that you're in. Inside organizations, progress is visible, number one, and secondly, in many cases, it's reinforced externally. Projects move forward, metrics get updated, performance gets regularly reviewed, even frustration has a structure, right? And so in independent work, progress becomes internal before it becomes visible. It's a sense of knowing that your thinking is sharpening before the outcomes actually change. Your language, in fact, becomes clear before your positioning does. You start noticing patterns, right? Patterns, for example, in conversations. You start to notice these, in fact, long before they actually translate into anything concrete. This, again, is the mindset of an independent consultant and a consultant in general. This capacity is clearly easy to describe, right? But I get it, deeply uncomfortable, especially if you're a high performer, because it has this sense of really being intangible. It doesn't feel like we're doing anything. It doesn't produce that really important dopamine hit of checking something off a list and having known that you've made progress. And because it's quiet, it's very easy to overlook, really easy to discount it. One person told me I kept waiting for something that would prove that I was on the right track, right? And what was actually happening to her was a lot more subtler. Her conversations became more focused once she recognized this. She stopped over explaining things and she started recognizing her capacity. And all the other tangible results and outcomes came afterwards. And so if you don't redefine progress here, you end up discounting the most important phase of development because it doesn't look productive enough. You rush toward outcomes, and that rushing actually creates more friction, more confusion, more discomfort as opposed to lessening it. So here's the really important third thing that we'll address: building confidence. And we do this through action and through this internal calibration process. This third practical shift that I'm going to share is understanding that confidence follows action in this independent environment. And once again, it doesn't precede it. This is one of the hardest adjustments for experienced professionals to make. When you're in a structured role, confidence is granted up front, right? Your title automatically conveys authority. Your position suggests that there's certain things that you're really good at, certain things that are under your purview, certain things that are within your bandwidth. And your experience is naturally assumed. You don't have to convince yourself that you belong. The system does that for you. When you're in an independent space, it's, of course, the reverse. The sequence changes. You move first, and confidence accumulates through repetition, through saying things out loud, through having real conversations, really honest, candid conversations, through refining your thinking in public rather than privately. Waiting to feel fully confident before taking the next step is one of the most common ways that capable people actually stall out. Not because they're afraid, but because they're used to confidence being a prerequisite of their actions or thoughts and ideas rather than being the byproduct of those things. Confidence here is built through exposure, not based on certainty. And exposure, that doesn't mean reckless action, right? It simply means small, incremental, very deliberate moves that allow you to test your thinking against reality. It means letting your ideas breathe outside of your head. It means discovering that clarity is often something you earn by engaging, not something you wait to receive. If you're in this space right now, feeling unsettled, but not broken, not thoroughly confused, I want you to hear this clearly. The discomfort you feel, it is absolutely not a sign that you should stop. It's a sign that you're learning. You're learning how to locate that sense of progress internally rather than borrowing it externally from an institution, an organization, or those structures that are provided to you. It's not a small shift, right? But it is a very critical and fundamental shift to make. It's the shift that goes from being evaluated to being self-directed. It's a sea change from being assigned to choosing what the best things are to do, from being validated externally to developing this internal sense of collaboration. You know you're doing well because the repeated process gives you that assurance once you've utilized that incredible expertise. And that's why slowing down to gain clarity as opposed to rushing to produce outcomes is often the most important, the most responsible move that you can make. This phase certainly is asking for patience, not passivity, right? It's asking for reflection, not necessarily rumination and analysis paralysis. It's a movement, but it's not a place for panic. If this resonates with you, the next step isn't action for the sake of doing something, right? It's understanding where you are in this transition and what kind of support or structure would actually help you move forward without unnecessary friction. Again, we need structure, but in this setting, you are recreating what structure looks like for you in this independent space. And that's why this learning process is such a critical part of moving toward the success that your experience pretty much guarantees. We still need some form of structure, even in this independent space. Again, it's just a matter of rebuilding what the tenets of that structure looks like. That's why, at this phase, I really encourage people to start with a grounded resource that helps them assess readiness, assess your constraints, and get a sense of your direction without pressure. Again, stepping back to take an objective look. The goal here is not to decide anything immediately, but to replace this sense of vague unease with clarity about these specific individual items. And because you understand now what phase you're in, it stops feeling personal. It feels natural. It's just, you wake up to the reality of here's where I am now, but it's such an important ingredient in moving to the next phases. And once that happens, I can guarantee you, because I've been through it myself more than once, forward movement becomes much easier not only to accomplish, but what's critical is it becomes easier to sustain. And of course, if this message has been helpful to you today, I love to walk alongside you on your journey to independence. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to the next episode.